Did you know that loneliness and social isolation can be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day? Welcome to Mindful Attachment Coaching channel. Today we'll be discussing a topic that's crucial to our well-being, and that's social connection. In this video we'll delve into why social connections matter, especially for those of us who come from avoidant or disorganized attachment. We'll also discuss how isolation, while sometimes can be used as a coping mechanism, overall is incredibly dangerous. Let's start by understanding the risks. Loneliness isn't just an emotional state, it's a serious health issue. Chronic loneliness has been shown to increase the risk of early death by 25%, and research shows that loneliness has about the same impact as smoking a full pack of cigarettes every day. Without regular social connection, we're more likely to experience heart disease, stroke, and a weakened immune system. And on the mental health side of things, loneliness has been linked to depression, anxiety, and also cognitive decline. Through our evolution, Homo sapiens began to develop collaborative skills and prioritize togetherness over individual strength or domination. So this meant the certain skills like greater ability to communicate and even detect deceit led to people surviving. And early in our evolution, those who didn't participate in the community at that time meant almost certain death. So as we evolved and our brains developed and our nervous system too, the way we're wired is that the experience of isolation is not just anxiety producing, it's physically painful. So let's talk about connection and how it relates to attachment styles and attachment theory. People with avoidant attachment style tend to choose situations where they can be independent and strong and not rely on other people or connection. And with disorganization, what tends to happen is people actually shift into isolation as a way to cope and emotionally regulate. And they have a paradoxical experience where they're both frightened of people and want to connect to them at the same time. What this leads to is these long periods of withdrawal. What starts off as an emotional regulation strategy, as a way to cope and settle the nervous system, but then it becomes prolonged and painful, and it really reinforces itself where the moment you're re-regulated, if you're using an avoidance strategy, it's harder to reconnect. And if you've ever had somebody who's a friend or you're experiencing this yourself, you know how hard it is to re-emerge into the world of social connection and relationships and just say, hey, how's it going? Let's hang out today. So there's this slow and painful withdrawal that occurs over time. Contrast that to the experience of social connection, the warmth, the belonging when you're with your friends, your close people, a family gathering, your intimate partner. And then imagine if you lost that or even part of it. Say a close friend moves across country, you have a breakup, or somebody passes away. The body perceives that as physical pain. So it's not just the anxiety and the sadness of losing that connection. We perceive loneliness, isolation as physical pain. So there's this strong link between social isolation and pain diseases like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, myofascial pain, and the list goes on. This pain is meant to drive us towards connection and not away from it. So this really brings me to my next point, which is this trap of loneliness you can get stuck in. Essentially, as you isolate in order to regulate, you can get caught up in these painful feelings and withdraw more and more over the years until you're completely alone. And it's one of the most painful experiences a person can have. So why is isolation so dangerous for us, especially for people with disorganized or avoidant attachment style? The reason is that pro-social interactions, feeling good socially, has a positive self-reinforcing nature to it. You like hanging out with friends, they make you feel good, you're putting more energy into relationship, and it keeps itself going. So there's a really important connection here between isolation and disorganized and avoidant attachment, where we can get caught up in this experience of withdrawing in order to cope, but then we also lose out on the good feelings, the pro-social experience we have with friends and close people. So then there's this vicious cycle where we keep withdrawing to emotionally regulate and also try to avoid the negative feelings of not only having losing connection but also trying to reconnect. Where have you ever felt like you emerge, right? You may have had a prolonged period where you're socially isolated, and then the moment you begin to try to connect, you feel self-conscious, you don't have a lot of experience anymore, you feel rusty. So those feelings can all keep building up over the weeks, months, and years as you rely on this strategy. And then you're caught up, you look back in your life and you say, where are all my close people? And that really is the most dangerous thing that I'm trying to tell you about, is this experience of absolute isolation. The thing about our world and our society, especially in the West and the US, you can be quite isolated and still be well off financially. You can get your food, you can get by. Our lives are really organized in this way. For example, you can order out food, and actually, if you look at the model of success that we have here, that really is part of the messaging, is that you're strong and independent. And at Mindful Attachment Coaching, you can visit the website, talk about different ways to break out of this cycle. And usually if you're in the disorganized end of things, you really need somebody else to help you. Somebody who understands what you're going through and has the specific skills, so you can work together in order to break out of this cycle. I can't underscore enough how vicious it is. In worst case scenarios, loneliness can become like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a snare that just keeps getting tighter the more we escape it. So there's a couple ways this feeds back into itself. You withdraw, you try to re-regulate, you also avoid the potentially negative experiences that you may have in social connection. And then what begins to shift is your sense of who you are, that maybe you're undesirable or unlovable, defective in some way, that why would I ever go out? Nobody really wants me anymore. So what can happen here is that as you withdraw, the further you go into this strategy, you begin to isolate over and over again to regulate that experience. And if this isn't sounding familiar, this is a lot like addiction, where you're caught up in this behavior that at first you say, oh, I'm just going to stay home, I'm going to read a book or play on the computer or lay in bed, whatever it is. And next thing you know, you're going for days, weeks, or even months where you're really isolated. In 2021 study by Daniel Maitland, a psychologist, what he observed was that people who are lonely, when they were prompted to connect socially with other people through EKG studies, their stress levels spiked. For individuals who have experienced prolonged periods of isolation, attempts at reconnection and being vulnerable can be a source of intense and overwhelming stress. Today, more people than ever live alone in single person households. It's about 30% of the population in the US, something like 40 million people. And the other issue is that post-pandemic, we've had remote work. People were already making less social connections at work, but now that's just not even a possibility for many of us. And what's most concerning is that young people, the younger generation, are less likely to make friends through work or public spaces because it just doesn't happen as much. So people go out less generally. And this really creates a stark picture where our society is shifting towards lonerism. We're really expanding this beyond just the avoidant and dismissive strategy and disorganization. This really is just a cultural shift we're having. And the effects of the pandemic continue to ripple out. Uh, So post-pandemic, people's social skills have really declined, and that makes sense because there was just less opportunity to socialize. So people are less willing to go out and make friends, or for example, attempt to connect socially. People have a harder time in conversation, maintaining eye contact. There's a lot of studies on this. So showing just across the board, and especially the younger generations, where school life was disrupted, and as they're developing, there was so much more screen time people were on. So we're really going to be seeing this rippling out effect. And then there's the greater cultural shift that we're all experiencing too. Digital isolation is also on the rise. So this is the experience of where you withdraw into some form of either digital or other form of isolation. So you're really just disconnected and on your own. And I can't underscore enough how vital and important social connection, and I don't mean just Facebook or phone calls, really at the physical level where you're in front of somebody, how important that is to your well-being in order to not just feel anxious, but I'm talking about to feel settled, where your nervous system can settle. But there's hope. There's many ways to begin to reconnect. So if you're finding yourself isolated or more isolated than ever and you're wanting to connect, there's small steps you can take today to begin to establish a community. So you can attend groups. You can also do your own personal healing work. You can check out our website, mindfulattachmentcoaching.com, where we work through the specific deficits you may have. Attachment disturbances are really a common cause of why people resort to social isolation in order to cope. And all of this can build up to not only repairing attachment and the immediate deficits, but also learning the skills of how to function socially, how to pull in really good people that you can travel with in your life that can support you and push you into a more fulfilling life. If you're familiar with my work, you know that really all of this comes together. The mindfulness, the attachment, all the other services we offer, they all come together. The point isn't just social connection. The point is really to learn how to explore and pursue meaning in life. And that's really what this is all about. If you found this video helpful, you can subscribe to our channel and get personalized attachment repair tips and mindfulness practices. You can also visit the website mindfulnessattachmentcoaching.com to start today on your attachment repair journey. Thanks for watching.